Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Inclusion Starts Now, the podcast. Today, I am talking to Angela, also known as Spicy Teacher on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I am so happy I was connected with her because she is just a wealth of knowledge, and you are going to learn so much. This is part two of a two-part series, all talking about the most recent, not most recent, all talking about the executive order that Trump has put through about discipline in schools. Last week, we talked a lot about that language of like discipline and consequence and culture. But this week, we're going to talk about what DEI is and what that means in the classroom. And we're giving you more resources, more tools to bring back to your school to make sure that everybody feels welcomed in their classroom. I'm so excited for you to listen to Angela. Seriously, she is amazing. Um, Enjoy. Angela, thank you so much for being here today. Do you mind giving a short introduction about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. I am Angela Harris. I am a mom of three and a wife. I'm also a career educator. I have been working in the field of education for 20 plus years at this point. I started my career as a early childhood educator working on the ECE side and then became a professional educator. And I have been teaching professionally for the last 14 years. I am currently a second grade teacher at Milwaukee Academy of Chinese Language.
Wow. Do you know Chinese?
I know a little. I mean, I can say hello and ask you what your name is and how you're doing. So this is my second year at Mako. Before that, I was working at a African American immersion school called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School.
Oh, cool. Oh my gosh. The this whole topic, I can see. So for everyone listening, this is Angela and I's first time communicating virtually, I guess. We basically got connected through a mutual friend, Karen, KB Teach, because I reached out to Karen being like, I really want to talk about this executive order. I'm not currently a teacher. Because my kids are really little, so I'm staying at home and I kind of sub right now and then do my consulting. Um, but I was like, I want to talk to people who are working with the group, these like minority groups, and like why this executive order is hurtful, is like why this is not good for schools and our communities. And Karen connected me to you, and I am just so excited. You just have so much background in this topic. So I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. No pressure, but so the executive order that Trump has put out, what is on the presidential website is that this he wants this executive order to restore safety and order in American classrooms by ensuring school discipline policies are based on objective behavior and not DEI. What is your opinion when you like first heard this executive order?
So one of the first things that I initially thought about, particularly as a teacher who creates content on TikTok, is that this was going to make a lot of TikTok teachers happy. I mean, they were going to be kicking their heels up and elated that Donald Trump had passed this executive order. I mean, put forth this executive order. Whether, it is legal or not, I think that a lot of the narrative that we hear about children, particularly in school now, is that behaviors are out of control and children and teachers feel helpless when it comes to disciplining children or providing consequences to children. And, you know, this is right in line with that narrative. I've said 1,000 times that if you are a teacher who posts content of that nature, you are the reason why we're getting executive orders like this. I thought it was hilarious when he talked about objective behaviors, because we're talking about human beings, right? Human beings that have implicit bias, explicit bias, they have perceived biases, right? An
Mm-hmm.
example that I use often is in my own classroom space. I'm not a teacher that is easily irritated by things like tapping on desks, right? Like if a child is tapping on a desk with a pencil or tapping on the desk with their hands, I'm not a teacher that really bothers. There are other teachers that will write students up for that type of behavior, right? And that is
Yeah.
a perceived behavior of disrespect, right? It isn't objective by any means because I'm telling you, giving you an example of how for me as a teacher that's not an issue, but I know other teachers where that would be 100% an issue in their classroom. So how are we going to ensure that these behaviors that children are being punished for are actually objective?
Yeah. Well, what would you say for people who do get, because I know like everyone kind of has their own triggers of like what behavior is gonna just really, frustrate them. Like what would you say to those teachers?
So the first question I'll always ask myself about behavior is, how is this harmful to the classroom environment? If there's an opportunity for a child to fidget in a different way, have I provided them with an adequate alternative, right? If a child needs to tap on a desk, perhaps I can provide them with a fidget that is a little bit quieter, that gives them the same type of feeling, but isn't necessarily disrupting the classroom environment. What is my goal? Is my goal as an educator to keep children in the classroom as long as I possibly can? Or is my goal as an educator to get them to comply? And if they don't comply, to send them out of the classroom space? What is the goal?
Yeah. I love that because I do feel like that was I was just talking to someone about how important it is for not only the student to be like at school, but to like be in the classroom. So it's like, how do we make sure that children aren't being told to leave or aren't being, like how do we make sure that they're actually getting that important instructional time and like those behaviors aren't making it so hard that the teacher just doesn't know what to do and is like, oh, you just got to leave. Like, I don't know, go find someone else who's going to help you. Because yeah, I feel like there's a lot of pressure, especially it's been interesting being a substitute because I keep meeting people, like all the teachers, and it's just interesting to hear what they say that they're just like, I don't know, I mean, I guess I'd be interested in what your thoughts here because inclusive education is improving, I would say, in like a lot of places near me. I've been seeing it improve, which means like that there will be different behaviors happening in the classroom because we're like figuring it out. We're like trying to figure out how we're going to support so many different learners. Um, but I feel like teachers are getting really exhausted from like not knowing how to support students and not knowing what to do with behaviors. And so I feel like that's kind of why this executive order came in, that they were just like, there's so many behaviors, kids can't learn, like, let's just bring back discipline. Um, which I don't agree with. But I don't know. I guess like what do we do? Like what have you seen like that's been helpful in your classroom or connecting with other teachers?
So everything that I do in education is really centered in equity and like really creating a situation where I'm looking at every child's individual needs. I often say that like every child should have an IEP, not necessarily an IEP in the way in which students with disabilities have IEPs, but each student comes to us with an individual set of needs as it relates to their learning, with an individual set of, behavioral issues or non-issues, right? And so, like you asked, how do we create a classroom space, a school environment that meets the individual needs of each child that's in our care? And so, when I think about the children in my classroom space, these 30 individuals that I have, I've tried my best, particularly as it relates to those students that do have some of those larger behaviors, to think about how I can best support them. I am not a psychologist, right? I am not, a mental health expert by any means. But who in the building can I go to that can provide those students with the additional resources, what places in the community, because I am really, really a huge proponent on making connections to community resources that families can utilize outside of the school space. Because at the end of the day, my school starts at 9 a.m. So we're really only there from 9 a.m. to probably about 5 p.m. And so if there's something that happens after that 5 p.m. time, will a family have access to the resources to be able to support themselves until school opens up again that next day? And so it's really about building those bridges and building those connections, identifying what the students' needs are, and just kind of figuring out a plan on how to best support them. And so that for me, it feels like takes a lot of the burden off of my shoulders, because now I'm reliant upon a team. I think so often teachers get bogged down in this idea that they have to do it all themselves or they have to figure
Yeah.
it out all themselves. And it's like that's why we have a team of people in the building that we can go to. One of the first questions that I'll ask teachers when they're struggling with children that have different behavior issues, what tiered supports have you tried for this student? Right before
Mhm.
you even thought about suspending them, what kind of tier supports did you offer them? And I'm not talking about like check in, check out. I know how people feel about that, but what other things have you tried for this student in order to support them before we jump to let's figure out how to get them out of my classroom?
Yeah. I think that's such an important way to look at that because, I mean, I feel like mindset is such a barrier for so many teachers where if you're sitting there thinking like, how can I get this student out of my classroom instead of like, how can I keep the student like in my classroom successfully? Like how different your brain is going to be working. Like if you're going to be actively trying to keep them there, but you have to like make it genuine, which is what I feel like as an inclusion consultant for like schools and families, that has been really hard because it's like I'm telling people, I'm like, no, you just have to like be friends with everyone. And they're like, well, I'm an introvert, like I don't want to be. And I'm like, well, that's what like communities do. So like you just, go find something that you have in common. Like sometimes I feel like I'm telling people how to be friends with your coworkers. Um, because yeah, I mean, I've ran into schools where they're like, yeah, I don't know, we don't really talk to each other. And I'm like, well, why are you gonna ask all these kids to like include everybody when like you guys don't include everybody?
I have a little bit of a different perspective, even in my
Oh
own
yeah?
classroom, right? I don't encourage them to call each other friends. They're classmates and they're community members, just like I am a member of the broader community, right? And I'm not friends with everyone that's in the community, but I do treat people with a certain level of dignity and
Yeah.
kindness. And I think that that is particularly in schools the biggest issue amongst teachers and staff members is that there's a feeling that either you have to be friends or family, and everybody doesn't always like jive with that or feel like that's the way to go, or else you're just kind of like on this island by yourself. And I would argue we can be in community with one another. We don't have to be friends, but we can make sure that when we are communicating with each other, that there is a dignity framework that we hold with one another and that we are kind to one another. I say to my students all the time, it costs $0 to be kind. Zero. Like that is something that you can do for free every single day. And if we are all here working towards the same goal, whether it's classroom or broader school community, then we have to learn how to be kind to one another.
Yeah. I guess I should probably say that I do use the term friends very loosely. I call everyone my friend. I'm that it like I have I identify as like an extreme extrovert, and it's
Okay.
like everyone is a friend unless it's basically everyone's a friend unless they do something bad. Then I'm like, I don't know, now you're an acquaintance. So totally, I think what I kept thinking of when you were just explaining was like respect and boundaries and like, that we can, like, you don't have to, be like, yeah, let's hang out after school, but you can still have a conversation and respect each other and like I don't even know if coexist is the right word, but, because I've also thought like when people don't like someone or something, I'm like, we're like there's always going to be someone you don't really like or you don't get along with, but we can still act like human beings and, you know, respectfully like coexist in the same area and not like have fist fights or whatever people do when they don't like each other.
And that's why like that dignity is so important, and like just really seeing each other's humanity at the end of the day, right? Just knowing and understanding that we're both human people who are trying to navigate this world, and we may not always agree, we may not like each other, but like I said in the beginning, if we can come to a common understanding that we are working towards the same goal, right? We want to support this student in the same way, then there shouldn't be a reason why we can't have that cordial relationship, that respectful relationship with one another.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's so important to be able, and I mean, to have friends or people in your community that you don't agree with. I mean, I think that's important to not agree with people and to continue to have those conversations so we can learn. Like, I mean, I have a lot of friends who have voted differently, who have different values than me, but like we can still have these conversations and like still leave feeling like a community and that we're gonna, be supporting each other and helping each other. But it's, I mean, those biases that are just like so embedded in us from our culture, our family, like our upbringing, like it's just so important. And I guess to like I guess bringing it back to the executive order, like the word that I really just did not like was discipline. That like bringing this discipline back to our schools where I was just like why why discipline? I mean, what? Because like I don't feel like I disciplined a lot in my classroom. It was a lot of like, we were like working together to figure out how we were going to be successful. Or like if we did something that wasn't okay, it was like, okay, there might have been a natural consequence. Like maybe that friend didn't want to play with you anymore because you hit them. But like now we're going to figure out like, okay, well, why did you hit them? Let's practice saying what you wanted or using your device or, like let's see what precursors there were so we can make sure that that doesn't happen again. Which I feel like is a lot of training for the teachers, which I would have loved. Can we get an executive order for that? How
Hello.
hard is that one to get? Just, social emotional learning for teachers and like different ways of communication for teachers. How did you get your training?
Mm. So I have always, one thing that I really appreciate more than anything about starting in child development versus like going directly into education is that as a child care provider, we were mandated to have 25 hours of continuing education. And so I was always looking for professional learning that could just expand my knowledge about brain development and how children grow and change and literacy and all of these different things. And once I decided to become a teacher, and so like the pathway that I took was a little bit non-traditional, right? So I didn't go to a four-year college. I enrolled in a teacher preparation program here in the state of Wisconsin. And so that allowed me to kind of shorten the amount of time that it would take for me to get my license. But as I was going through this class, I was like, if this is how they are preparing teachers, like to go to school to become teachers, these teachers are not going to be prepared. And this was coming from a person who had had these years of experience prior working in a classroom setting and like understanding what it was to, create curriculum and create inclusive classroom environments, even though it was for younger learners, it still, translated into what I was getting ready to do. And so I just felt like I wasn't going to be prepared either. And so I just have always had this thirst for knowledge and learning. And I think, a lot of teachers will say that they're lifelong learners. And they're not, but I actually am a
Yeah.
lifelong learner. So I'm just always trying to find um professional learning that I think is going to help improve my pedagogy. So when I started working as a professional educator at my first school, I said at my school, Dr. King, my principal there was the type of administrator that was always pushing his educators into professional learning. Like, here's a professional development about restorative practices, Mrs. Harris, you should attend. Here's a professional development about equity, Mrs. Harris, you should attend. And so he was just always pushing me into learning about new approaches that I could use in my classroom space. And he was really instrumental. I did my master's thesis research on explicit phonics instruction as a tool to decrease academic deficits for Black children. And so he was just really instrumental in like helping me kind of create what I think, professional learning should look like for an educator that is new to the field, and the types of things that I think that early career educators should learn as they're getting ready to enter into the classroom spaces. And I'm so thankful for that now, because I think that really is what shaped my perspective on discipline versus punishment, and
Mhm.
natural consequences versus forced consequences, and just really understanding how to navigate behaviors, learned behaviors, and shifting behaviors, and all of these things that you need when you're working with children, particularly those that are struggling with the social and emotional component of school.
I That is so beautifully said, and I am so interested in your thesis. That sounds so cool. My master's thesis was all about educating people, educating general ed teachers on students with disabilities, I think
And
was
I
like what the
I
title
love that
was,
too. I
which
love
it
that
was
too,
fun.
because general education teachers will listen. General education teachers and special education students, that's just something that needs to be researched very deeply, because so many teachers feel like they are the special education teacher's responsibility. And it's very tough in a district like mine, where we have moved away from exclusion in our we have a full push-in model now. Like, all special education teachers, outside of those that have like extreme needs, are inclusive in the classroom. And so there's a lot of challenges that happen between general education and special education teachers.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested if we will get to see the change kind of in our lifetimes. I'm really hoping we get to, but because like I do feel like there are general ed teachers who like want inclusion to work, or like want to expand their role as the teacher. But it's like that they genuinely haven't learned about it. Like in their teaching courses, they had like one class on disabilities, and that's not enough at all. That's such a small, like an intro to disabilities course for a general
Yes.
ed teacher is giving you nothing.
Yep.
Um, and so, I mean, and I guess that's why, because I was, of course, special ed teacher. I had an emergency teaching credential, like my first year or two teaching, like I was still in grad school. And it was really, I mean, I was so lucky with the first school that I was at, because they were just so for inclusive practices. And they were like, yeah, bring your kids in. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, which was just so amazing. I quickly learned that is not the case at every school. Um, but I digress. I love this social scientist. His name is Adam Grant. He has a bunch of different titles, but he talks about, like, in one of his books, Think Again, where people should constantly be rethinking. Oh, you're talking about forever learners, because he was saying that people should always be rethinking like their goals, their plans. Like, you should not have a 10-year goal and then like never rethink how you're going to get there, or maybe like change the plan, maybe make it a little harder. Like, that you should always be rethinking like your values, your goals, what you're doing, whatever. And he said in this interview, like, people will ask him like, or people will tell him like, well, I'm really good at rethinking, but no one else in my job is. Like, how do I make them better at it? And usually he's like, well, if you don't think anyone else is and it's only you, like usually you're not doing it enough either. Like, it was kind of this like you can't really win, because it's like you just have to, like, you can't think that someone's not doing it as well. Oh my gosh. I don't know if this is coming off the way that I am trying to get it to come off, but I feel like people, especially teachers, are always like, yes, we're forever learners, but to like actively search to make yourself like rethink things and like change your teaching patterns because people just get stuck in their ways. I feel like I've seen teachers who teach for 10, 20 years and they're like, this is how I've always done it. It works and I'm going to keep it this way. And it's like, what? No, kids are changing, jobs after schools are changing. Like, we also need to be changing constantly. Um, and learning is that is how you do it. And I love that you had an admin who was like so focused on that for you. I mean, that is like huge.
I think, part of what you said about Donald Trump's executive order around discipline is this whole idea of let's go back, right? Let's go back to when you could actually discipline students. But when we think about the students from even 10 years ago, right? To the students today, those students didn't go through a global pandemic alongside a racial justice reckoning, right? Like
Hmm.
those students didn't have to be away from their classmates and classrooms and teachers for almost 2 years, right? And family members for almost 2 years. Those children didn't have family members and friends pass away and never see them again, right? And
Yeah.
so thinking about trying to use the same discipline techniques that we used even 10 years ago is unfair to to the students that are sitting in front of us today. And to your point, right? I think the
Yeah.
whole idea of rethinking, if I'm understanding, I think the whole idea of rethinking is what I like to practice as an educator, and that's self-reflection. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of educators don't do that, right? I like to look at my practice, like from day to day, from week to week, from month to month, from year to year. How have I shifted what I did in the past to meet the needs of the new set of students that's sitting in front of me today? And I think that when you become one of those educators who's very rooted in this is how I've always done things, you are doing not only a disservice to your students, but to yourself as well, because you could be figuring out and discovering things about yourself as an educator that you didn't even know was possible because you've taken the time to actually reflect on your practice and your pedagogy. And I honestly think that that is why so many folks really struggle with behaviors today, because they are still thinking about them in terms of how children behave. I mean, I hear teachers say it all the time, these children are different. And if they are different, then why aren't we using a different approach?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That that is like you just hit. I want to tell that to everybody. It's like, yeah, okay, so they're different. So then let's change what we're doing. It's as
Hello.
simple as that. Oh my gosh, that's so great. So I want to kind of talk about like DEI because I feel like I don't think people know what DEI is. Or and I feel like they're using it wrong. They're using the definition wrong. So I would love if you like, do you have a good definition for DEI or a good explanation of like DEI in the classrooms that you can share with us?
Mhm. So I said this quite a few times before. So, diversity in the classroom looks like students from various cultures and socioeconomic backgrounds and varying races and varying abilities. If we didn't have diverse classrooms, we would have white classrooms, right? And so, when you're saying, I want to remove diversity from the classroom, that means that you're taking out all of the things that make students different from each other. And that is the beauty of most classrooms. When I talk about equity in education, that means giving every student what they need to be successful. So not one student is going to have more or less than the other. They're going to have exactly what they need to thrive in a classroom environment. And so that's going to look different from student to student, and that is okay. And then the final part is inclusion. Inclusion means no matter what the student looks like, no matter what ability they have, if they walk into my classroom, do they feel welcome? Do they feel seen? Do they feel valued? Do they feel like they can participate effectively? That is what inclusion is. And if that sounds like something bad to people, there's something wrong with them. Like there's
Yeah.
something inherently wrong with you if you hear those three things and you are upset.
I mean, and what usually when I, argue with people on the internet, I feel, and but not argue, have discussions with people on the internet, it is usually defining language. It's usually like, okay, you're saying you don't like inclusion. What is inclusion to you? Like, why don't you like it? And I feel like that is just the ongoing conversation I have with most people of just like when there's a problem to something, it's like, okay, well then like just define these terms because yeah, how could you just broke down each one so simply and beautifully. And for someone to hear that and be like, no, I don't want to be a part of that, it's like, okay, then you are choosing to like go be excluded by yourself. Like, this is what our communities are. And like the public school system, that's like what the public school system is for our communities.
I agree. I mean, for most communities, right? I that is what the public school system is, and that I think that is what we should all aspire to want our school to be these diverse spaces of learning where all children's needs are met and everyone feels like they are valued and welcomed in that space. Like that doesn't to me that doesn't sound like a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I would love to feel welcomed in all my spaces. I
right?
mean, it seems so simple. But yeah, I mean, oh, actually, I keep wanting to ask someone about this. I'm not sure. Did you read like what was on the White House website about this executive order?
Which one, the diversity, equity, and inclusion one, or
Um, the
the
discipline
discipline?
one.
Yeah, I read it.
Okay, because there was one part and I kept highlighting it. They switched it to discriminatory equity ideology based school discipline. Did you see? Okay, what can you do you want to try to explain that to me? To me, to the listeners? Because I highlighted it because I just kept being like, what? Are you trying to like rebrand DEI? It was weird. So,
So one of the things alongside this bill that happened was the silent dismantling of the Office of Civil Rights. And so a lot of school districts have leveraged the Office of Civil Rights. Well, not school districts, a lot of parents and community have leveraged the Office of Civil Rights to sue school districts for discipline disproportionality, mine being one of them. In 2018, a group of parents took my school district to court and said that they were over suspending Black boys. And so the Office of Civil Rights did an inquiry. They found out that it was the case that Black boys were 6 times more likely to be suspended in our school district than their white counterparts or non-white counterparts for a similar offense. So, like I mentioned earlier, the pencil tapping. That is something that was classified very often in my school district as a chronic disruption. And so when you think about a chronic disruption, right, you would think about you, and for me, that feels like something that is really stopping me from teaching my classroom to the point where like it's happening so often that I have to stop and address this behavior that I can no longer adequately teach my classroom. And so through that, there were steps that my district had to take to rectify the discipline disproportionality. So here we are 10 years later. We haven't really seen any shifts in the discipline disproportionality, about 1% shift in the discipline disproportionality. And that is because we still have the same discipline practices that we had before. And so now with this executive order, it allows if my district wanted to be like, we are no longer going to address discipline disproportionality. That's not a thing, right? Black boys and white boys are not treated differently in terms of discipline. Again, that word objective, it is an objective behavior that we are using to dole out this punishment for whatever the infraction is. And so this now rolls back those types of regulations, those types of lawsuits against school districts that really say that like there's an over suspension of black and brown boys and girls in predominantly white or even predominantly black and brown school districts. And so now teachers will or in districts will be able to suspend those students at probably even greater disparate rates than they were before.
Yeah. And I feel like this, I mean, there's, as I was saying at the beginning, like there is proof that like the kids of color are getting um treated, they're getting suspended quicker, or they're getting just treated differently for very similar behaviors. And I mean, the Zimmerman study is my favorite study that shows that where they documented teachers even like observing students, and they would observe black students more than white students, just like to prepare to like discipline them, which I feel like, and I mean, the first time I read that study, I was shocked because it made, I mean, I wasn't a teacher anymore when I heard the study, but I was like, man, I kind of wish I was so I could try to see if I was doing that. Like I kind of, and I mean, going back to your self-reflection tool, like, and I think that's something that people should be constantly doing, of like self-reflecting of like our biases of like, okay, did I treat someone differently because of their color, because of their ability, because of their gender? Like, did I just respond differently than I would have if it was like a person who is like white like me? Um, which is again, I mean, like we have these studies to prove that it is important to recognize culture, and ethnicity and background when planning to like have a discipline or consequence to something. Um, do you, not to put you on the spot, but do you know of any other studies that talk about this? Because Zimmerman,
No, I use that Zimmerman study very often. I hope that there are more that eventually come out. There's a scenario from that study that I use in an equity training that I do where it talks about I think maybe it is a first or second grade teacher who is allowing the students to answer questions on the carpet, and several black students like shout out the answer, and so she sends them to the back of the room. And they're no longer allowed to participate in the questions, and the white children are still sitting on the carpet. Some of them are also shouting out, but she allows them to remain. And so it's not even this idea of like discipline, but even also uh how do we provide instruction to our students in a way that then could lead to potential behavioral issues, right? Because now you have excluded me from the learning environment and the learning experience. Now I'm in the back of the room where I have a potential to get into some trouble because now I'm not even engaged in the learning anymore. And so how do we not only as teachers look for ways to disparately punish students, but how also during the time that we're providing instruction, are we also doing that same thing?
yeah. I mean, and how much like the other kids see that, and like how, I mean, I just think of like the students who are like internalizing that themselves, to then other kids observing it happening, to the teacher kind of reinforcing, like it just, it's like so multi-layered um problem to then take DEI, like recognizing DEI in schools and communities.
And I think I would just say this: diversity, equity, and inclusion in schools has been used in a way to address some of these things that we're talking about. Teachers' implicit biases, right? There are school districts that have, encouraged teachers or mandated teachers to attend professional learning that is rooted in equity and understanding biases and, understanding racism and white supremacy and how these things show up in our school districts. And I honestly think that that is what President Trump and the folks that are behind executive orders like this are afraid of. Because when we start to unpack some of the structural and systemic racism that exists within our country, that makes people begin to think a little bit more critically about these systems that we are educating our children in, right? That we live in. And so then folks like the Donald Trumps of the world and the wealthiest 1% have a more difficult time.
Yeah. I feel like very quickly people will be like, I'm not racist, I'm, whatever. And it's like, it's not if you're racist or not. It's kind of like how much of that, like, like how much implicit bias do you have that you just like might not even recognize. And I just feel like it's something that just needs to be talked about more and taught more. And I do think people in power don't want a lot of people critically thinking and like gaining more knowledge because then we're going to start questioning things and we're going to start saying no to things and which is also not good. Uh but yeah, I feel like I can listen to you talk forever about this because I just it's so important. Are there any like online resources or like tools that you feel like a teacher or a parent could like pick up right now and it would be like a good place to start?
So there's two things that I can recommend almost immediately. So there is an article that I share often. It is called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. It is by Peggy McIntosh. It was written in, I believe, like 1991. It is a super old article, but it is so relevant today. And it is particularly relevant to white educators, white folks in general. And then also, if you have not taken the Harvard implicit bias study, like there are, I don't even know how many categories they have at this point, but some Harvard students created a part of their doctoral thesis was an implicit bias survey that you can take. And there are it's race based, gender based, political, religious. And so I have had teachers take this during trainings and they are floored when they get the results because people do not believe that they have implicit bias.
Hmm.
And I honestly will say, I have said time and time again that it isn't not it isn't always a race thing. There's gender biases, there's socioeconomic biases that exist, and so there are all sorts of biases that you could be bringing into the classroom space that you're not even aware of. A story that I share from time to time is as I was learning and growing and unpacking internalized white supremacy, I can remember a time going into my own communities and feeling unsafe, feeling like I had to lock my doors or clutch my purse a little bit tighter, not realizing that that was implicit bias that had been embedded into my brain over time,
Yeah.
in based upon the society that we live in. And so, like, those are two resources that I can say, just like for me, even really began to shift my way of thinking. And then the last thing that I'll share is Ibram X. Kendi in his book, How to Be Anti Racist. He talks about racism as a spectrum, right? And that you are not non-racist or anti-racist. You're either not racist or racist, right? And there's no in between. And some of us, and I mean all of us are somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah.
And so we have to do the work of unpacking that. All of us, right? It shows up different for marginalized folks than it does for white folks, but it exists for all of us.
Yeah. I love his books. We also have the baby board book.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, those are great. I actually have a question, because I read this book it's called White Fragility,
Mhm.
and I had a white friend tell me that she heard that a lot of people in the black community didn't like that book because a white person wrote it. What do you have? I mean, not to like, again, just like a random, but I felt like that was a really good, when I read the book, I was like really, it really helped me reflect on like my own biases. So I really liked it. And so I was shocked when she said she didn't. Would that be a resource that you would recommend at all?
Um, Probably not. I could recommend better resources, but what I will say is wherever you start the work is where you start the work, right? It's
Yeah.
about starting the work and continuing the work. I think my biggest issues with Robin DiAngelo is the idea that she made this book about white fragility, and then kind of disappeared. There was no continuation of the work for
Oh,
her. And so I don't think that that means that that work stopped for the people that read her book, and hopefully it did not. But
yeah.
if 2020 through 2022 was any kind of an indicator, I would say that that probably is not the best book to read because that book came out during that time, right? Where everybody was really intent on addressing systemic racism and institutional racism and all of these things because of the Black Lives Matter movement and the racial uprisings, because of the unrest related to police violence. And it was like everybody was excited to read White Fragility. They picked it up and read it and put it back down and never picked it up again. And
Yeah.
so how you continue the work to me is more important than anything that you ever read. Right? I could give you 10 book titles that I think that you could read right now, that could help address all of these things that we're talking about. But what you do after you read that book, after you read that article, after you take that Harvard implicit bias survey, is more important to me than anything else.
Yeah. Okay. No, I love that. Thank you. I'm going to put all of these in the show notes and I'm going to put all of your information in the show notes so people can find you on TikTok. Are you on other things too? Are you on Instagram or YouTube or
I am, YouTube is a tricky beast, but I am there. I
it
am
is?
spicy teacher. I am spicy teacher on all things TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Awesome. Okay, I will tag you on this. And I meant to ask you this before. So I usually end my podcast episodes with a tarot card reading, a Mystic Cats tarot card reading. Are you okay with that?
Sure. Can I pull a card too?
Yeah, what do you like? You have tarot cards next to you? Stop it.
These these are
Oh,
called the Alchemist.
oh my gosh. Okay, so then I'm gonna look really bad because I'm not very good at this. I have to read my
Oh.
little book. Gosh, I'm so excited. This has never happened before
Oh, oh my gosh, cards popping out everywhere.
because they're so excited too. I'm about to be going through a lot of transitions this next year. We are about to be foster parents. My oldest is going to kindergarten.
Oh,
We are we got a lot. We got a lot happening with kids and education, and I'm feeling pretty confident about it. But I also know I'm having a lot of anxiety dreams. So I would definitely love to just know like even just like these next like 6 months. Like I want to know what these big transitions are going to feel like. I'm going to say just for me, not for the family. I want to know what it's going to feel like for me these next 6 months of change.
all right, cards. What are the next 6 months like? This is the fertility card. I have never pulled the fertility card. This is my first time, so I'm actually going to read my book too.
Oh, yay.
First time pulling this card. So let's see. Fertility is you are going to foster a little baby. Is it going to be, do you know yet? Is it a
No.
baby or okay?
We're going to be licensed from birth to 7 and we're
Okay.
hoping we want to keep siblings together. So
No, yes.
that is like
Okay.
the goal.
So is it
Not the goal.
foster to adopt or just fostered?
I mean, yes, foster to adopt, but we're very like want an open adoption if that's like what's best for everybody. Like we're very for family reunification, but we also understand that there are kids who like already their bio parents have like don't have they've already like lost parental rights, which I'm sure you can tell after our whole conversation, I believe that like all parents are good parents and there are barriers and things that come in between them being able to provide a safe environment for their kids. So we want to be, a part of that, like with their family, and hope that that is what we can do all safely together.
So one of the things that resonated so deeply with me from the Lived Experience Summit was the parents sharing their stories of going through homelessness and drug addiction and all of these things that they had to overcome in order to be able to get their children back. And for them to now be able to be advocates for other parents who are going through similar things, it just touched my heart so deeply because to struggle in that way, like to lose your child is devastating, right? And to have the willpower and the perseverance and the resilience to navigate a system who is not intent on reunification, right? That is not the intent of that system. It's just it's just something to really admire. It really is. Okay, so I started reading this and this is messages for you. This is for you.
Oh my gosh.
The seed of life came from the divine mother and from her womb, abundant creation. In creation, the goal is to manifest balance. It is time to root yourself with the elements. Within you grows abundant potential for creation, and the only tools you need are compassion and grace towards yourself and what you are growing. Your creation becomes your responsibility. So it is important to love yourself in order to love what you are growing in the lush garden of life. The earth is most abundantly in your favor. Fertility is our feminine mother. This is your time. This is time for you to bloom and allow yourself to enjoy what you currently have, what you are growing, and what it will become. Though you have the seeds of potential, they can also sprout into uncertainty and anxiety if not given the tender love and safety a mother provides. To feed the fetus, you must first feed yourself. So, this book always comes with questions that
Wow.
you should ask yourself.
Yeah. That like could not have been more spot on for everything.
Everything you said,
That was
everything
crazy. Okay.
you said, so crazy. Do
Wow.
you, do
Okay,
you
so
know Do you know that health is generational wealth?
that health is generational wealth. I love that. I think that is, yeah, huge.
When was the last time you took a walk?
Today with my kids.
And are you listening to what your body needs?
You know, I seriously, this like card could not have just, it is so perfect. Pretty much like 2 weeks ago, not, this is gonna sound kind of bad, but I had a book club and I got just super drunk. I'm not really quite sure. I was the one hosting, so I think that's kind of what happened was
Yes,
that,
yes. Yep.
we were all talking about the books and then my husband made us Cosmos and I just like I was one of those like 2 day hangovers, and it wasn't like I was out clubbing. I was literally sitting at my house talking about a book, and
Right.
it's embarrassing to even think about how this all happened. That was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it seriously, the next day I was writing down a list of like do not drink more than 2 drinks in one sitting. Go outside every single day. I don't care what the weather is. Like start doing more yoga or meditating. Like I wrote down these things of like, don't eat unhealthy processed foods, all that, like, make sure you're eating spinach or whatever. I just like wrote down this whole list in my like sad state of being hungover, which, oh my gosh, I do not drink that much. And I was just like, what is happening? And since then, I've just been very cautious of everything. I have not been drinking. I have not been eating like a bunch of sugar or processed foods. I have been like going outside. I've been focusing on my body and my health. Like I that is just like a crazy card that these last 2 weeks have been just a very like I have like rethought how I've been treating my own body because I feel like, if I'm ever tired, I've even set an alarm to go to bed because I'm like, you are staying up too late. Go to sleep. Your kids wake up so early. Why are you doing this to yourself?
Hmm.
And man, like what I feel like so validated that these last few weeks have been like, yes, girl, keep doing this. Oh my
That's what we
gosh.
call alignment right there. That is what we call alignment.
Dude, my tarot cards are so different. This is going to be such a we should have probably started with with your reading because this is going to be so silly. But that was amazing.
So
People came here for an executive order discussion and they just got like the last 20 minutes is going to be all about tarot cards.
Zero. It's okay. It's all right. My friend
Wow.
brought me this deck because one of the commitments that I made to myself at the start of the year was to tap into some of the gifts that I think that I received from my ancestors. Um, my grandmother will always tell me like she thought that I had the gift of sight. Like I've always been a very intuitive person. I always lean very heavily into my gut and like what my gut tells me to do. And these cards have not been off yet. It's been pretty interesting
Yeah.
to start to learn this process and learn how to work with tarot cards and like use them as a guide.
Yeah. That I mean, you've just inspired me to put these by my bed so I can do them every morning and just keep like practicing it and like have that intention. Oh my gosh.
It helps me like with my journaling every day because then it just kind of gives me some questions, like some guiding questions I can ask myself, even if I don't take, because each card has three questions. But if I don't take all three, if I just take one, and
Yeah.
just use it for my journaling for the day and to just like kind of set some intentions for the day, it's been really helpful.
Oh my gosh. I love the questions too. That was I'm probably gonna have to edit out like that 10-minute explanation of me being drunk, but that was
It was
that
a
was
good
so
story though.
that it I still like I felt I not
For a
my I yeah,
non-drinker, Cosmos, like that's a big drink because
I know. It was one of
and
my
to have more
friends
than two.
I know, and it was one of my friends who got driven to my house, and she was like, "Oh, have Josh go make some Cosmos," and I was like, "Okay, I'll ask him," and just went down like water. I was like,
They do.
it
They
was
do.
so bad. I wasn't drinking water. It was such a mess, such a mess. Okay, what do you want your question to be?
So one of the things that I am in limbo with right now is staying in the classroom or leaving. Just basically like what's I know that I'm not going to retire from teaching. So what's next? Like I've been applying for adjunct professor jobs and just really thinking about how to expand my purpose beyond what I'm doing right now.
Okay, that's I feel that. It sounds, whoa. It sounds like you're educating so many people. I'm sure it's like I mean, as much as I feel like teachers do so much, I can definitely relate to that like, okay, but I want like more. I want to help more people. I want to educate more people, which I get that vibe from you a lot. You have no cats on here. I'm so sorry, but it's an Ace of Swords. Usually there's a lot of cats. Okay. Ace of Swords. I'm a little concerned that their arm is off,
Yeah,
but let's
it's
see.
checked out.
So it's all about new ideas and focus. Oh, and the wording is usually kind of cutesy because it's all cats. So it says, "Aha, hold your sword high with victory, but know that this is just the beginning of the battle. You're about to have a breakthrough. Embrace these new ideas and explore them with confidence." So it's very, very simple, but I feel like that is Right on to what you're thinking.
Yeah, yeah,
Embrace it.
that's the message. I gotta embrace it. I don't know how close you are to Seattle, but Seattle seems more progressive in terms of like a lot of things.
Yeah, we're actually closer to Portland. We're like the
Oh,
next
okay.
city over. But
Oh, I'll be in Portland in June.
really, for what?
Another conference I'm presenting at
Night. What conference
the
is it?
NEA Racial and Social Justice Conference is
Oh,
going to be in Portland
cool.
this year. Yeah, and I'm presenting on abolitionist teaching.
Nice. Oh my gosh. Well, there's
Hmm.
a great convention center that I'm sure that's where it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure like Tash, which is like one that I go to a lot, I'm pretty sure in 3 years it's going to be in Portland.
Okay.
But
Okay.
oh my gosh, if you want to
Yeah.
like hang out or something, if
I
you're not
will
so
definitely reach out because I'll
busy.
be there by myself. So definitely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we would totally love that. Josh is now invested. He's
Okay.
cool. Um,
As
okay.
long as
Well,
he's making Cosmos.
yeah, I am allowed a third a Cosmo and it has to be
Okay.
watered down
Okay.
while we go for a walk.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Angela, for being on my podcast today. This was such a great conversation, and I could listen
Thank
to
you.
you talk forever.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was an awesome time, and I will come back anytime.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I appreciate you all taking the time to be here listening to this podcast, furthering your education. If you have ever thought that you've wanted to maybe be on this podcast because you have a topic that you feel like I haven't touched on, please reach out to me. Find me on Instagram, Inclusion Starts Now, or you can email me at Kayla at inclusionstartsnow.com. I always welcome new people onto the podcast to talk about something that is important to them that, revolves somewhere around inclusion or inclusive practices. Thank you again so much for being here. Please go like, comment, subscribe, rate this podcast so people can keep getting this important information. Okay, that is it. Inclusion starts with you, and I just want to help. Have a great day.